Zariah shuffled through the bustling middle school hallway, her shoulders hunched beneath the weight of an old, olive-green jacket. It was frayed at the sleeves, faded from time, and far too big for her small frame. To her, it was a shield, one that carried memories stitched into every seam. But to others, it was just something to laugh at. The laughter started softly, then grew louder. A few students pointed, nudging each other as they passed. A group of popular kids leaned against their lockers, eyes narrowed with cruelty masked as humor. "Is that your grandpa's jacket?" one sneered, lips curled. "Or did a dumpster throw it back?" Laughter erupted. The words hit like stones, each one chipping at her silence. Zariah didn't answer. She kept walking, her eyes downcast, her pace steady. But her hand instinctively gripped the worn sleeve tightly, her thumb brushing against the small patch sewn onto the chest. It was hand-stitched, a faded eagle surrounded by initials and a date. Inside, her heart ached, not from their words, but from the memory the jacket held. Her grandfather's jacket. The man who taught her to sew, to stand tall even when the world tried to make her feel small. He had worn this very jacket through storms of war, and now she wore it through storms of judgment. She wanted to speak up, to tell them what it meant, but the lump in her throat was too heavy. So she said nothing. Not yet. She just walked away with the dignity she could still hold on to, her silence louder than their laughter, the patch on her chest a quiet defiance. She didn't know it yet, but someone would notice. And everything was about to change. The cafeteria buzzed with chatter and clattering trays, but Zariah sat alone at the far end, head bent over her lunch. She picked at her food, not out of hunger but habit, eating in silence had become routine. Her jacket, that same olive-green one, hung over her shoulders like a memory too precious to fold away. A soft scrape of a chair broke her solitude. A man, unfamiliar but kind-eyed, sat a few seats away. He was the new substitute teacher, tall, middle-aged, with a presence that was calm rather than commanding. He wasn't trying to pry, but something had caught his eye. The patch. He leaned in gently, voice low enough to show respect. "That's an interesting patch," he said. "Where'd you get the jacket?" Zariah hesitated, fingers brushing over the faded eagle stitched just above her heart. For a moment, she considered brushing him off like she did with everyone else. But there was something in his tone, genuine curiosity, not judgment. "It was my grandpa's," she murmured. "He wore it in the war. Before he passed, he taught me how to sew, so I added the patch. It's his initials, J.W." The substitute's face shifted. A flash of recognition passed through his eyes. He didn't say anything right away. Just nodded slowly, lips pressed in thought. Then, with a soft, "Excuse me," he stood, pulled out his phone, and stepped aside. From afar, Zariah watched him talk, unaware that this small moment, this quiet tribute on her chest, had stirred something deeper. The old jacket, once mocked, was now whispering its truth to someone who understood its weight. 2 days later, the school buzzed with an unusual energy. A surprise assembly had been announced, and students gathered in the gym with the restless excitement only unexpected changes in routine could bring. The principal stood at the center of the stage, clearing his throat as the crowd settled. "Today," he began, "we're honored to welcome a very special guest, one of the highest-ranking military leaders in the country. Please welcome General Harold Whitaker." Gasps echoed across the bleachers as the tall, silver-haired general stepped forward in full dress uniform. His chest bore rows of medals that shimmered under the gym lights, but his eyes scanned the students. Not with pride, but with purpose. Without a word, he stepped down from the stage and walked straight into the crowd. Whispers spread like wildfire. Teachers looked puzzled. Zariah blinked in confusion as the general stopped directly in front of her. He knelt. "Young lady," he said, his voice steady but filled with emotion, "this patch belonged to Sergeant Jeremiah Walker. He saved my life in Kandahar. He was brave, selfless, and the finest man I've ever known." The gym fell completely silent. "He was your grandfather, wasn't he?" Zariah nodded, too stunned to speak. Tears welled in her eyes. The general turned to the crowd, took her hand, and gently raised it in the air. "And so is she, a hero. For remembering him. For carrying his legacy when the world tried to shame her for it." The students were speechless. No one laughed now. No one even blinked. All they saw was a girl with a jacket, no longer old, no longer faded, but sacred. The first clap came from a teacher. Then another. And soon, the entire gym rose to its feet, applauding not just the general, but Zariah. The applause swelled like a wave, rippling through the gymnasium, rising from scattered claps to a thunderous ovation. For a moment, Zariah just stood there, frozen in the center of it all, her worn jacket glowing with new meaning. The same students who had mocked her 2 days ago now sat in stunned silence, eyes lowered in shame. The popular group, who once laughed the loudest, could no longer meet her gaze. Their smirks were gone, replaced by something quieter. Guilt. Regret. Zariah's eyes brimmed with tears as General Whitaker reached into his uniform and unpinned a gleaming gold insignia from his chest. His hand trembled slightly, not from age, but from emotion, as he placed it gently into her palm. "Wear this with pride," he said, his voice cracking. "Your grandfather would be proud. And so am I." Zariah clutched the pin against her heart, right beside the patch. Her hands were small, but in that moment, they held a history greater than anyone in that gym could comprehend. Her throat tightened, unable to form words. But her tears spoke for her, grief, pride, and the quiet power of being seen. The ovation didn't stop. Teachers wiped their eyes. Students stood taller, their respect no longer forced, but earned. And for the first time, Zariah didn't feel invisible. She didn't feel mocked. She felt honored. She had worn her grandfather's jacket to stay close to him. Now, the world finally understood what it meant. In the noise that followed, a different kind of silence broke, the silence of ignorance, of cruelty, of unspoken pain. In its place bloomed understanding. And a girl who once walked the halls in shame, now stood like a soldier in the light. Weeks passed, but the memory of that day in the gym still echoed through the halls like a quiet anthem. The buzz had faded, but the impact remained. Zariah walked the same hallway, the same faded olive jacket wrapped around her. It was still a little too big, the fabric still worn thin at the elbows, but now, it carried something else, reverence. As she moved through the corridor, heads no longer turned to mock her. Instead, students offered gentle nods, some even smiling as she passed. A few had stitched small patches onto their own backpacks or jackets, tiny symbols of respect, stories they were beginning to share. On the bulletin board near the main office, a new poster caught her eye. Bold letters stretched across the top. The Legacy Project, one story, one patch, one hero. Beneath it were photos of students holding items that mattered to them, a locket, a worn baseball glove, a folded letter from a sibling in the military. It had started with her. Zariah stopped and looked at the poster, her fingers grazing the eagle patch on her chest. It felt warm now, like the jacket itself had come alive. No longer just a shell of the past, but a voice. She turned, walking down the hall not with defiance, but with grace. Not needing to prove anything, because the truth was already stitched in. She didn't wear the jacket to hide anymore. She wore it to be seen. Zariah's story is more than a tale of one girl and her jacket, it's a reminder of how easy it is to judge what we don't understand, and how powerful it is when we choose to look deeper. What began as ridicule turned into revelation. What once brought shame became a symbol of pride. Through the simple act of honoring her grandfather's memory, Zariah unknowingly sparked a movement, one that gave others the courage to share their own stories, to wear their truths boldly, and to find strength in what makes them different. In a world quick to label and dismiss, kindness has the power to transform. A substitute teacher who chose to listen, a general who chose to act, a school that chose to change. These are the threads that rewove the meaning of one faded jacket. Zariah didn't shout or demand attention. She didn't need to. Her quiet strength, her love for her grandfather, and the patch she stitched by hand spoke louder than any insult ever could. And as she walked forward, jacket still faded, still patched, but now celebrated, she carried more than fabric on her shoulders. She carried legacy. She carried hope. And she showed the world that sometimes, the most powerful stories are the ones worn closest to the heart.